let me go ahead then, and we'll have her. Yes, I see that it is recording. We will have Sam go ahead and cut these first few few seconds out here from the meeting. Let me get myself up and running here. I am going to share my screen, and then I will start PowerPoint slideshow. All right, let me move some stuff out of the way here, and I'm ready to start. Good evening, everybody. I'm Becky Heil, and I am only half of the Bonnie and Becky show. Bonnie had an emergency, and so she isn't able to be here tonight, so I will be flying solo, except for my helper, Amanda, who is here to help me with all of the details. As I mentioned before, if some of you were in the room a little bit earlier, please rename yourself, or you're going to get a private message from Amanda that says, please rename yourself. We want to make sure that we've got an accurate attendance list. So we'd appreciate it if you've got your first and last name in there. It just makes it a lot easier for us to get you marked off in the CE catalog. We had about 103 people registered, and it looks like we've got about getting close to 50 people in the room. So I think we are going to go ahead and get started tonight. So our webinar, Boardroom webinar for tonight, is featuring this brand new resource that we have at the State Library that is completely free to you. The State Library has hired someone to put this together, and it's up on our website. It is called the Public Library Compensation Toolkit, a guide to fair and equitable pay. And we know there are a lot of library boards that are out there that are interested in this. How do we do it? What's the best way to go about this? So tonight's program is going to be a high-level overview of this toolkit. We're going to talk about some of the basic aspects of it. If you see on the screen, it's kind of like that old journalism mantra: who, what, when, where, why, how. We're not going to do it quite in that order, but we're going to talk especially about why we felt it was so important and why there's such a need for this resource. We're going to talk a little bit about what's included in it, and then where you're going to go to be able to find it. So let's start with the why this came about. Why did we think there was a need for this kind of a toolkit? And I'm going to give you some statistics here that might just blow your minds. In any given year, the district consultants will see anywhere from 10 to 15 new library directors being hired, sometimes as many as 20 or more just in one district. That's nearly every year in nearly every district, and we have 6 districts in the state. So that's any place from 60 to 120 new directors every year in Iowa libraries. That's between 16 and 22% that are hiring new directors in a given year. And sometimes we see that same library needing to hire again, even in the same calendar year. In 2023, a library hired a new director in March. We met with her in May, and she resigned by November. The second reason is we get a lot of requests at the state library, especially in the districts here, for sample job descriptions. They can always use updating and refreshing, even if you're not going into a new hiring phase. And this toolkit is going to help with that as well. Your job descriptions should also be closely connected to your evaluations. And I get asked a lot for job evaluations. So even though really good material about job evaluations aren't part of the toolkit, with new job descriptions, you should be able to develop some really good evaluations. Another reason, when a library board works with its city to try and increase the director's salary, there's often a lot of questions about what should be the starting wage. In my experience, there aren't many towns that have a citywide pay scale for all city workers. So this resource can lead to developing salary scales where there aren't any right now. And finally, the State Library had this project as part of our strategic plan, making this a really important service goal for us. So in 2023, as I said, the State Library hired an outside consulting firm called Siegel to assist with the development of this toolkit. You can see on this training slide that the Siegel Consulting presented for the library staff some more of the reasons why this development is so important. One reason, it allows for sharing background and context regarding compensation components and market data to help guide compensation decisions. It also helps library boards and directors to better understand director and staff qualifications responsibilities, and then make better job descriptions. It also helps compare the library director's job in comparison to other jobs in your city or county. And then it provides resources not only for collecting compensation market data, but I think this is the most important thing that it provides. It also is going to give some tips for facilitating those compensation conversations. A lot of times I can help folks through here's where you get the information to compare, but it's that piece of going to your city and figuring out how to have that conversation that can be really important. So I think that's going to be a really valuable piece of this. So here's another slide that explains what is going to be included in the toolkit. Now we're going to go more into detail about this a little bit later in the presentation tonight. You can see on this slide that what the toolkit is supposed to do is provide library boards, directors, and staff the tools they need to request fair and competitive compensation. That link that's on there is going to open the main page that houses not only the toolkit, but also some templates, as well as several other resources pertaining to hiring or statistical data. And it will also have some recommended reading, books that the State Library has available in our professional development collection that you can access via interlibrary loan. The toolkit and all of the templates are all available for you to download and use without charge. And I'm seeing folks still come in here, so I'm just going to take a little sec here. And Amanda is helping right now, getting people marked off in the catalog. So be sure to let her know, rename yourself in the box, and then be sure to let her know if you've got other folks who are in the room with you as well. Also, those of you who have been with me before know that I tend to just barrel on through. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them into chat. I will probably save them for the end because hopefully I'll have answered a lot of them by the time we're ready to finish up here. But please don't hesitate to put any questions or comments in the chat, and we'll get back to them at the end of the time here. So now let's take a look at where. Where can you find this toolkit? Hopefully you have all bookmarked our State Library website. It's a really easy one to find, satelibraryofiowa.gov, and that's where you're going to find the toolkit. Just hover over the word libraries in that top menu bar, then you'll get a pop-up menu. The far right column of that pop-up menu is called Toolkits and Guides. About midway down, you'll see the Public Library Compensation Toolkit. Just click on that link in order to get access. So here's our who question. Who should be using this toolkit? You're going to see the answer on this slide. Let's take just a minute for this reminder. In nearly every public library in Iowa, the administrative board, the Board of Trustees, hires the public library director, supervises, and if necessary, disciplines the director and can also dismiss that director. The library director is responsible for hiring, evaluating, and if necessary, disciplining other library staff. In larger libraries, the director may have a department head who supervises others and hires and evaluates in their own particular department. So in those situations, this library compensation toolkit would also be useful for supervisors and managers. This toolkit might also be something you'll want to share with your city, especially if your city doesn't have anybody in an HR capacity. So while the toolkit is designed with public library employees in mind, it can work equally well for any department head position within the city. Here's a real life example of the who. People who might be finding value in this toolkit. We had a session on August 8th during the daytime that was intended for library directors, where we sort of debuted this product. And that's mostly who was in attendance. But we were really pleased that there were a few city clerks, city managers, and one city HR director. So I'd like to think from that second comment on the screen that this has the makings of a city hall, city library collaboration. Now let's look at some of the scenarios of when you might want to use the toolkit. The most obvious reason is when you're planning to hire your next director, or when the director or supervisor has the opportunity to hire a staff position. So hiring is an ideal time to review your job descriptions and your pay scales. So this is probably the time it seems most obvious to use the toolkit. But there are also a few standards in our accreditation program that speak to the library board's involvement in matters of personnel. The ones listed here are just a handful of personnel-related standards, and they are all required at Tier 1, the lowest level. So turn to this toolkit to update your library's job descriptions, but there might be other times as well. If you're considering pay raises for any library personnel, this toolkit is going to be valuable for determining an appropriate pay scale. For incorporating those libraries into your annual budget proposal, you may turn to this toolkit. And it certainly highlights the library board's role of advocating for the library by ensuring that the library is well staffed with fairly compensated, qualified employees. So now let's move and take a look inside the toolkit. Again, we're only going to be doing kind of an overview, but these next slides should really demonstrate a good way of how you might want to use this. So in order to effectively utilize the toolkit, you're going to do four things. You're going to complete what's called a job analysis questionnaire, and we're going to take a look at that in a minute here. You're going to review similar positions in your area. You're going to collect some compensation data from those other positions that you reviewed, and then you're going to compile your findings into some talking points. So the first one, completing a job analysis questionnaire. This is probably something unfamiliar to you. It certainly was to me the first time I heard about it. It was put together by the consultant from Siegel. And it's, again, a template that you can download, but I'm going to kind of walk you through some of the things that are part of this. So in order to understand the value of a position, in order to determine a request for compensation, that's really the first step that you have to do. You have to know what value is placed on that. So a position's value correlates to the knowledge, skills, abilities, and qualifications that are needed to perform the duties and responsibilities. So the questionnaire gathers data regarding a position's duties, responsibilities, essential functions, required qualifications, and physical conditions. This information then provides a baseline with which to compare other similar positions and ensures that libraries have an appropriate understanding of the expectations of the role of compensation considerations, as well as in recruitment, performance, and development. Remember, this questionnaire is intended to understand the job and its requirements, not for individual performance or for specialized skills. The responses that you give in this JAQ or job analysis questionnaire can be used to form a request for fair compensation or develop a job description that documents the role, responsibilities, and expectations of a position, as well as the needed knowledge, skills, and abilities to be successful. For example, the responses from the JAQ can provide key job information that can then be compared to other positions within local government structures in order to ensure fair and equitable compensation for positions that have similar expectations. The JAQ can also be used to update a job description, as we've mentioned before. So when filling out the JAQ, you will be asked to provide a job summary. Think of it like this. If you meet an old friend in an elevator, how would you describe this position in a very brief amount of time? You will also fill out a section called Essential Duties. A duty is a distinct activity that's a logical, essential step in the performance of a function, and it's a detailed description of what work is done, how the work is done, what procedures are in place, what materials or tools do you use, and then why the work is done. What's the purpose? So here's a couple of examples. First, a library director prepares an annual budget and presents it to the Board of Trustees. That's a very simple, succinct list of one of the essential duties of the library director. Here's a second one. The director is responsible for library purchasing, receiving, invoicing, payment, and reconciliation of library financial transactions. They also develop long and short-term financial plans and budgets for board consideration. So again, it's a very succinct way of talking about all of those essential functions that the library director has to do. So essential duties aren't just a list of job tasks. you want to be thinking about what takes at least like 10% of your time on an annual basis. So instead of writing, this person enters the following information into the XYZ database, they enter the record number, the book name, the author, the subject. So instead of writing all those things out, you may just say, this person enters required data into the XYZ database and then audits the entries for completeness and accuracy. So again, a one-sentence way of describing what a cataloger might be doing. If you end up with more than 5 essential job duties when you're writing these out, you really should consider, can some of those be combined or consolidated? Maybe you have a line in there about this person repairs equipment, and then maybe they also inspect equipment. So combine those into one essential duty regarding equipment maintenance. Another thing that's a part of this essential duties is you will be asked to estimate the percent of time spent on these essential functions, again, throughout the course of a year. How much time do you spend working on the financial piece, or just putting together a budget, or dealing with personnel issues with the staff? So think about, is it 20% of the time that you spend during the course of a year? So those will be some of the questions that you'll need to be answering as you put together this JAQ under the essential job descriptions there. Not shown on this screen is a section called supervisory responsibilities. That's where you're going to indicate the level of supervision this position provides to other employees or volunteers. That brings in another whole piece of something that a manager might have to do. There are also sections about teamwork and collaboration, discretion and independent judgment. I remember a time when I was in a position where all of the positions within the city were being evaluated, and they wanted to put people in specific levels. So, is the library director the same as the person at Parks and Rec, or the city clerk, or what do they compare? And one of the things they talked about was independent judgment. Is this person required to make decisions on their own? Library directors, absolutely. When somebody comes up to the desk and has a question about, can we get rid of this policy, or can we change something in this? That's going to be the library director's responsibility. That staff person might not have the ability to be able to make that decision, and probably the director doesn't have to go to the board for each and every one of those decisions. So what kind of independent judgment is being used? And that's another good way of adding more information to that job analysis questionnaire. The job requirements, which is on this page here, is part of the next section. This will ask about education, experience, certifications, knowledge, skills, and abilities, and tech proficiencies. We're going to take a look at some of those in just a second here. Remember, when you're talking about education and experience, you should only consider what's required, or what's the minimum level of education or experience needed in order to successfully perform that job. What's required or needed might be different than the experience or qualifications an individual in that role right now might have. So remember, you're not writing it for the person, you're writing it for the job. And while positions often require minimum qualification levels of education, experience, credentials, etc., some positions might allow for education and years of experience to substitute for one another. For example, a position might require a bachelor's degree, but an associate's degree and 2 years of experience might be an acceptable substitute. An example of the expected knowledge might be things like the principles of intellectual freedom, cataloging and data management, or generally accepted budgeting principles. So this is a knowledge that we expect that person to come in with. We don't want to have to train somebody on cataloging and data management if we're hiring them as a cataloger, or we want the person we're hiring to do our financial management to understand and already come in with a knowledge of generally accepted budgeting principles. So examples of skills might be things like organizational and time management skills with a high degree of attention to detail. Or it might be something like you need to be proficient in standard office software, such as Microsoft Office Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You may also need proficient oral and written communication skills. Again, someone coming in with a skill set that they may have picked up either in education or in a former job. And when we talk about abilities, it might include things like providing exemplary customer service, or the person might need to be creative, curious, and open to incorporating new technologies, strategies, and tactics. So the ability might be something that's more personal. Not everyone is going to have that same list of abilities. And so when you put in enough of those that you can sort of figure out what are the most important ones that you need for this job. The toolkit even provides a really great overview of specific tasks to demonstrate proficiency with technology. You can see on the screen here, there's quite a few sections, 7 or 8 sections, I think, on computers. So part of this JAQ is technology proficiency. So you're going to ask yourself, are they required or expected to operate and use a computer? If the answer is yes, you need to fill this section out. Do you want, if they're which is the level that you would like them to have for their things? A basic set of hardware skills might be they can turn on, restart, and shut down computers and monitors. They can assist patrons and help them operate smartphones, tablets, and e-readers. They can add devices to the library's Wi-Fi network. Those are some basic hardware skills. Then there are some more advanced ones. Can they repair a corrupted hard drive? Can they troubleshoot connectivity issues? Can they understand and install a reboot to restore system? So if you're hiring for someone for IT, they might need a more advanced set of computer hardware skills. So you get to decide, do you need this person to have basic or advanced? Once you have all of these answers, this is going to be so helpful as you're putting together that job description. The last section discusses the work environment and physical demands. I like the list. Again, it's larger than what you see on the screen here, but the physical demands includes a list of items that a potential employee should be able to perform. And again, are they going to be typing or keyboarding? So are they going to need to be able to use that? Do they have to do repetitive motion like checking books in and out using a scanner? Do they have to reach up to the top shelf to put new items up there? Do they have to be able to read and write? Do they need to have good eye-hand coordination? Good thing that wasn't part of my director one. I never would have made made that one. Things like vision. There are some jobs in a library that you could probably use things like screen readers if someone had low vision, or some other aids for a person in doing some of those jobs. There are some jobs like driving a bookmobile, you might not be able to hire somebody with low vision to be able to do that. So making sure that you've got this list of physical demands for each job that you're working on is also, I think, very helpful. And again, as we start looking at comparing with other city jobs, if the city maintenance worker has to lift 90 pounds above his head and yours is less than 10 pounds, we need to look at that and see what those comparisons are. So this is another way to do some comparisons between job descriptions. So now, once you have completed that job analysis questionnaire, you're ready to create a job description. The compensation toolkit includes a template for drafting job descriptions, which again is a fabulous piece here. I get that question all the time. Can you share some sample job descriptions with me? And I generally don't like to share a specific job description because that was made for a specific library and you may not have that. You might be able to pick out some words, but I don't like people sort of picking out pieces wholesale to put into theirs. So the nice thing about this is it includes a template. Here are the things that you should include in your job description. Things like the title, the position summary. You want to include information about the library in there. You want to ask questions about their education and experience, or put in your requirements for education and experience. What are some of the others? Have you done human resource management? So listing those essential functions are going to be critical as you're writing that job description. So you can see where it ties immediately back to that JAQ. This job description also meets standard 21, which says you need to have job descriptions for all of your employees. It can, again, once you've got this new job description written that includes all of this, it's going to make job performance evaluations significantly easier. If you are saying, here are our requirements, you need to have human resource management, or you need to have information, or you need to have background in operation and finance, because those are some of the essential duties. 6 months into the job, when you're doing an evaluation, you start looking at how well are they handling that operation and finance piece? Are they doing programs and services? Are we getting good responses from folks who've been going to those program and services? So even though evaluation isn't part of this toolkit, you certainly can use this job description that you've written now to do part of that. And again, every job is slightly different depending on the library, the community, and the position. So that's what makes the template especially important and a real benefit. The next piece then is, now that we've got this great job description, we want to identify similar positions. And I'm going to show you this next slide. This is where most people go, and it's a place where I tell people to start as well. But this, what we call the big book of statistics, or the big stats book, is something that the state library puts together every year. And it includes things like salaries of certain positions within the library. The unfortunate part, though, is it doesn't include information on, what their background was before they came. It doesn't include things like how many hours that person works, or if they're full-time, or if there is other compensation along with that. And it doesn't include things like how many years they've been on the job. It's going to be a different salary for someone who just started last year to someone who's been there for 8 or 10 years. So when all you get is that raw number, that makes it kind of difficult to do any real good comparisons, I think. The other thing is, this stat book only compares library to library across all the population groups. And again, it's a good comparison, but it begins and ends with library positions. And those all tend to be underfunded when compared to other jobs in your city. So library-only comparisons often lead city councils to realize maybe they're not the lowest paying city on the list. And then when you have a majority of libraries in any given size code that are all underpaying their library directors, the entire average is then grossly misrepresented with a low figure. So comparing pay to that kind of an average isn't really a good comparison. So while it might be a place to start, there are lots better ways to do that. And we're going to get into some of those here. So start maybe with that library to library comparison, but move beyond that to compare to other jobs. So this slide provides an example of two comparable positions, a library director and a local government department head of marketing. This example is presumably comparing two city employees within the same city. So, we've got the city position A, the library director, and we've got city position B, the head of marketing, in the same city. So when you look at that position overview, the salary for library director is $45,000. The salary for the marketing department head is $55,000. So let's dig into that a little bit farther and see what are the differences that might make it so that that marketing head earns 10% or $10,000 more than the library director. Let's look at that first one under key similarities. They both provide daily oversight and leadership of the library. They are both responsible for financial operations like budget development, financial forecasting, exact same wording in both of those job descriptions. They also both develop and assist in the development of a strategic plan and goals. Again, same thing in the marketing person. Library director oversees 3 to 5 staff. Marketing director has 4 to 5 staff. The library position requires a bachelor's degree with 6 years of experience. The marketing head requires a bachelor's degree with 6 years of experience. So we haven't found anything so far that says why this marketing head is making $10,000 more than the library director. So take a look at the key differences in here. At the library position, The state library requires they be endorsed. That means they have to take classes while they're in there. There's nothing in the job description for the marketing head that says they have to continue taking classes as they go along. The library director also works with the board of trustees, which can add that extra layer. The marketing head reports directly to the city manager, so they don't have 7 bosses, they have 1. The library director is also responsible for facilities management, building maintenance, grounds, equipment, capital projects, renovations. The marketing head doesn't have any of that. So this can show your city some very stark contrasts in what positions that are very similar are making, and it gives you a position of strength to come from as you're out there talking with your city about perhaps raising the position of the library director. So even though that's a fictitious example, it's something I have seen over and over and over again as I ask people to look at their city or their county sometimes, or a similar size city in a nearby area, and start looking at the differences in those job descriptions. And again, I think it gives you a really good idea of the types of things that you want to be looking at. So the toolkit then also includes a template to help compare the library director job, like I said, with other jobs, just like that slide that we just showed there. There should be other city job descriptions to help you fill out the template. Those are all public information. You should be able to go to the city and get copies of those job descriptions, so that you can start looking at that salary. All that salary information is also public knowledge, so you ought to be able to take a look at those. So I like the list that's on this slide. These are the things that you're going to want to look at for similarities or differences. The scope of responsibility, the impact of the work, how much are you involved with, like I said, that independent judgment, how many decisions are you making on your own? The type and level of communication with others frequently comes into play as well. A library director has staff that they have to work with. They have their trustees that they have to work with. They're also dealing with the general public as people come in with complaints or issues. They are also dealing with city government, whether it's a city manager or a city council. When the mayor walks in and wants to ask you questions about things, they frequently are communicating with the press. They communicate with the state library and have to have those kinds of communications. They communicate with other libraries in their area. The Friends group is another group they have to be able to have good relations with. So that type and level of communications, again, can really point out differences between some of those jobs. Again, knowledge, skills, and abilities, you want to be comparing similar ones as you're looking at other positions. And then working conditions and level of physical demands, as I mentioned earlier. Library director, unless you're having to be the one out shoveling your sidewalk, probably doesn't have to worry about keeping the streets clean in minus 20 degrees. So the guy who's running the street sweeper or the garbage truck or the road grader has some different physical demands. So again, we want to weight those appropriately. In some ways, we have I always say it's kind of a cushy job. It's usually air conditioned. Yeah, I know air conditioners go out and it doesn't always work the best and you sometimes get hot, but compared to some of the other jobs, I'm glad I'm working indoors. So where do we find some job ads? And as we're looking then for other jobs to sort of compare with, the Iowa League of Cities has a really great website. I want to check time here, which can be a really great source for finding job ads across all kinds of city employment positions. They have job listings for city managers, city clerks, police officers, park and rec directors, community development directors. So those are all good ones to look at, and then again, start comparing, like those last couple of slides showed, start comparing those responsibilities of those jobs with yours. And when you find ones that are similar, pull those out and start looking at those salaries. Another good place is Iowa Workforce Development. It's described as Iowa's largest job bank. There are generally more than 60,000 job openings in a whole lot of industries. So again, it may not be necessarily government jobs in there, but there may be other department heads in an industry that have a lot of the same responsibilities that a library director might have. So take a look at some of those and see if you can find some similar job descriptions there. Now we're going to go on. So we've filled out our JAQ. We've written a really good job description. We have taken a look at what are some of the similar jobs that are out there. Now we want to start collecting that compensation data so that as we start going to the city or as we start putting money into the budget, we have some really good, solid facts in order to be able to make those decisions. You definitely want to collect data from a variety of sources. That's going to help build a strong consensus regarding what is considered competitive pay. So if you look at the example that's on the screen, you want those salaries to have some consistency in order to make a sufficient case. So you can see in there, library director source one, source two, source three are all making, just over, just under $17 an hour. So that means they're kind of apples to apples. They're pretty close there. If that table showed $55 per hour for source one and then 17 and 16 for the others, that might not be one you want to include in. You want them to be similar enough to have an accurate comparison. And again, remember, if the data is provided on an annual basis, you have to check and see what's considered full-time. I worked for an organization that full-time was considered 37 and a half hours a week. And so we were never, we clocked in at 37 and a half and we were never compensated at that 40-hour a week level. So if you're looking at that, make sure you know what is considered full-time and how many hours that actually reflects. And again, be thinking about things like if that data comes from an area that has a much higher cost of labor, it might need to be adjusted to reflect the cost of labor in your location. So we want to make sure when you're gathering that, again, that it's apples to apples. Oops. I sort of messed up on that one. Sorry, guys. This for me is the really interesting part. This facilitate compensation discussions. As I said, that can be one of the hardest things either for a library director to advocate for themselves or their staff, or for a board of trustees that needs to go before a city council and say, we have researched this and we want to give our library director a substantial raise to put that person in line with other jobs that are similar. And those can be very difficult conversations to have. So for me, this is one of the most interesting pieces. So here's sort of the overview. You've done all your legwork. You first want to probably share it with the personnel committee of the board so that, and maybe that's who's been doing a lot of this legwork if it's not the library director. You want to be sure it's shared out with the full board so everybody understands where this information came from. And then if your city has an HR director, you might start there and start bringing them some of this information that you've collected, or maybe it's the city manager that you need to go to. Eventually, though, you'll be looking at either your city council liaison or the city council themselves as you kind of walk through this. Always make sure that it's a face-to-face meeting rather than an email. We want to make sure everybody is on the same page and really understanding each other's position on this. You need to have that conversation. So let's look at, again, one of the things that I think is really, really helpful, and that is a script that they have put in here. So here's some talking points as you're beginning those salary discussions. Again, we've done all of the background work and we've got our data, we've talked to all the right people, and now we're sitting down to have a heart-to-heart to say, here's why we want to improve this salary. So obviously, thanks for taking time to meet with me today. We have updated this job description to better reflect the role and responsibilities. So we've done some research on similar and comparable positions, and the compensation that's in this position appears to be low. So again, it's a very neutral, we've looked at this, we've done some comparisons, and according to that, this looks to be kind of low. This position pays this amount of money, but a similar position, the head of marketing pays this position. The position at that might be one you're comparing to another local government. Another one that you might be comparing are positions at this library, and they're similar size to us. They have a similar budget. They have the same number of employees. They pay X% more than we do. Here's another one. This position is paid the same as another within our local government. However, this position includes additional responsibilities that should be recognized with additional compensation. I really like that phrase, recognized with additional compensation. The library or this position has not received salary increases in 6 years. I've heard that story. I have had library directors, I have had library trustees who have come to me and said, this position, this salary has not changed in the 7 years since I've been here. So, we can say that very clearly. Go back, do your research, and then due to this, here's part of your script. Due to this, the compensation for this position is no longer competitive with others in our city, county, or area. I think that's in some of those scenarios that I painted early on when we lose so many library directors, that's a large position. When somebody can make more money working at Casey's with no responsibilities, that are sort of over and above, why, if they can make more money there, why would they keep this library job? So again, we want to let the city know, or whoever is in charge of our compensation at this point, what the research says is adequate for this area. And then, finish it up. Thanks for letting me meet with you. What are the next steps? What do we do now that we have shared this information with you? What would you like us to do for our next steps? Or is it something that you're going to take back with you there? So I have sort of blazed through some of this, so I hope you all have lots of questions here. Otherwise, we're going to be done early tonight. But as we wrap up, there are just a few additional pieces in this toolkit that, again, I think are going to be really helpful. There is a 2-page glossary of action verbs that can be used to define the list of essential function in a job description. So again, we're not just listing tasks, we're saying that they're checking, they're compiling, they're communicating, they're adjusting, they're administering. Some really great action verbs that are on here. And again, 2 pages of those. So as you're writing that job description, here are some of the words that you're going to want to use to put in there. There are also, as I talked about communication, there's a list of communication interactions. Is it just transactional? I work at the front desk and I greet somebody, I answer a question, I respond to their question, or I check their books out and have a little thing? Or is it some kind of standard communication? Providing information to people who might be upset or angry. Again, maybe that front desk person. Is it complex communication? I'm having to explain things to the friends of the library. Is it strategic? I am meeting with the city council to talk about why we need more money for to pay for our library director or for my library staff. So again, looking at comparisons, those are all compensated at different levels. And so it should be taken as part of the compensation package then. And then the types of supervisory responsibility. Is it just me? I don't supervise anybody. Am I a lead worker? I'm not exactly, I can't hire somebody, I can't fire somebody, but I make sure that they are scheduled and that they show up on time for their job. Am I a functional or division manager or department head? Am I an administrative manager like the job, like the library director might be? So again, that type of responsibility is going to be something you fill out on that JAQ. The last piece that I want to show you there is kind of a repeat from before. We've also included on that website a list of materials that might be helpful for you. I'm looking at this, the one kind of in purple there, proving your library's value, persuasive, organized, and memorable messaging. What a great thing if you're going to your city council or you're trying to make a case in public for some other things. So again, I think there's some really great resources out here. That Public Library Director's HR Toolkit also has some good information. Again, these can all be borrowed through the State Library of Iowa. And this is a handy map that is on our website that shows you all 6 districts. There is a consultant in each one of those districts who can help walk you as a library director or you as your board walk through this toolkit and help you as you if you get stuck with some of those pieces or if you'd like a little bit of information about those. Your library, every library in this room belongs to one of these districts. So make sure you reach out and contact your consultant. We can do presentations. Maybe there were a lot of library directors who weren't able to come to either this one or the other one. We're happy to come to county meetings and do a presentation, or we're happy to meet with a library board and kind of walk you through this if you're really starting this process in earnest and you want somebody to kind of help get through some of these things. We can help with that as well. So we're kind of back to the why. Recruitment and hiring is not an easy process. So hopefully this toolkit is going to make that process a little bit easier. It certainly provides a thorough approach to the process with some professional guidance for boards that don't have much HR experience among their members. It should be a great help in updating job descriptions because it helps lead you to a greater understanding of the library director's responsibilities. And because of, as library boards, you're hiring managers with supervisory responsibilities, with budget oversight, with programming skills and technology skills, this is going to be a big piece of why you want to use this toolkit and why it's going to be important and helpful for you. So I am going to go off screen in just as, go get out of the toolkit, get out of the PowerPoint here in just a second, but I'm going to ask you a question, and I want to tell us your why. Why are you thinking, why did you come tonight? Why do you think this will be something that will be useful for you at your library? What's coming up right now? How do you think you might use this? And then the last piece I want to tell you on this slide and the next is the evaluation for tonight is not going to be because you're not going to be able to go into Iowa Learns. You will need to do a form that we've got out there. So Amanda will put that in the chat, and there's a link here if you want to copy that one down or do a cut and paste from that if you're on your laptop. And then it's also on this next slide here. Again, I've got a few minutes, so I want to ask you guys some why you're doing this tonight. And I think we've got mic rights if anybody wants to do it that way, or if you would like to post something into chat. But thanks for joining us tonight. I'm also certainly available for questions. We've got plenty of time left here. So I am going to stop my share and get out of this. And I would love to read in the chat over here if there are reasons that you have very specifically of why you want to be here tonight. I have shared this over the last 6 months as it's been being put into, as it was being published. I've had trustees and library directors say, we've got an opportunity right now to talk to our city council about increasing our library director's pay. Can you help me with that? And so I have been pointing them to this. Tara, perfect, working on staff raises. This is a great time to do that because you're heading into budget season right now, aren't you? So as you're working on that library budget, making sure you get those staff raises in there is a really great reason to kind of work your way through this. Yeah, Margene, I think that's very, sadly, it's very common. I don't know, but that sounds like a living wage in Iowa, $17 an hour. That sounds very logical to me. And I think all of our library directors ought to be making a living wage. And again, advocating for your staff, I think, is really important for library directors to do that. Other reasons, trustees, why are you guys here tonight? What are you hoping to accomplish with this? Anybody want to go off? If you've got a microphone, you are welcome to take that off. And
the solution. Well, doesn't have much solution, but she thought.
Yeah, Jennifer, that's a really good. I think that goes back. There was something in one of the slides about, equal. This position hasn't kept up with other places in our area. And so if you're not having interest in it, that one of the reasons could be because the pay is low compared to other library positions in the area. So I think that's a great reason, when you've got that open position and you're not getting applicants. I think that's something that you want to talk to your city council about and
So
board.
Becky, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Becky, this is Jackie from Marengo.
Yeah. Hey,
So
Jackie.
good. So my dilemma or issue right now is that the Department of Labor at the federal level has changed the salary threshold, and I am coming significantly under that
Mm-hmm.
threshold.
Mm-hmm.
So where my board has said, we'll give you, if you can find the money in your budget, we'll give you the raise. But when you talk at the city, there's no money in the budget. But the
Right.
problem is I've been keeping track of my hours, even though I'm salary, and I put in 265 hours of overtime last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just trying to figure out, well, I do have a salary chart that shows me what everybody else in the city's making.
Mm-hmm.
And I am significantly under the other
Mm-hmm.
department heads. So it's just trying to
And
figure it
we're
all out.
we're hoping that Mandy put something together. I haven't seen anything yet come out in the library field about that issue. I know it's out there. I know people are concerned about it, but I haven't seen anything official come out at any of the levels at this point. So it's something that I think we'll be working on, and hopefully we'll have at least the legal information, if we can't give you guidance on that. But that actually brings, Jackie, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that brings up something I meant to say at the beginning. And that is, we've been working on this, I think the first slide said since 2023. So it's been like a year and a half, 2 years almost, that we have been trying to get this put together. When we put the idea of a compensation toolkit in our strategic plan, and that was several years ago, times were a little different. And you could, or we heard of libraries who could make a good case to their city council and actually get some improvement. If you can't just go in and say, well, we think our director needs a raise, and so we want to give her $5 an hour raise. So we wanted to make sure that people had that information to help them with that. The problem is what has happened since we started putting this together. You all know, with changes at the state level that came from the legislature, cities are absolutely crunched. And if the money's not there, the money's not there. So this may feel a little tone deaf to some of you. You may be saying to yourself, we can put all this work into it. We can show that our director is $10,000 underpaid for the year, and we know our city doesn't have the money to do that, or we know they're not going to be able to do anything about it. Even if they agree with us, they are being squeezed and pinched right now. So we want you to know that we are definitely aware of that issue right now, and kind of apologize for the timing on this. But again, I think it will still be useful for writing those job descriptions and for the future. As things ease up just a little bit, you may be able to, if you start those discussions now, you may be able to make a little headway as you're going through there. Let's see some of the other comments here. Oh, that's really good. I think that one just flipped past me here a little bit. Alan, I think that's really great that instead of having the city manager be the one to, try to be making those comparisons, it's much better for you to be able to do that. You have a much better understanding of that. So I think this toolkit will be really helpful for you. Great, good. Robert, thanks for being here tonight. I hope that you found some useful information, and as you get to that toolkit, that it's got some really good stuff for you. Yeah, Sarah, I've heard that over and over again. They only want to compare to other libraries, but of course that's because they know other libraries are underpaid, and so it's they look better if they compare to other libraries, like we said, that are already underpaid. And you know they don't want to compare it. What do you do with that? You present them with all the statistics and the facts, and if they don't want to, you're kind of stuck there. And Christine, I know you've been working on this for a really long time. But again, that's good because we do have boards that haven't really been able to be good advocates for libraries. So again, if you can share this with your board, I think that would be really, really helpful. All right, so anybody else have anything to add there? Otherwise, I am totally open for questions. How'd I do? Well, look at there. I actually made it till 5:02. Questions from anybody? And sorry, Jack, I wasn't really able to answer yours specifically.
No, it's fine, Becky. They're also one of the other issues that we're having is that the union contract's coming up for negotiation right now.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so the city's staring down like 10% wage increases for their city employees.
right,
And
right.
after
Which is going to
some,
put you farther behind.
I know. Well, I actually get the same salary increases that everybody else does. The library is
Oh,
in
that's good.
that. So
That's
that
good.
we've been lucky with that. But the problem is that because they decided that we needed to dig a hole in the ground and fill it with water, and put a nice big giant slide in there, that's the number one priority.
Right,
And that's where the frustrating part comes in because we like all library directors and library staff, you try to stay within your budgets, you try to do the best you can, but
right,
at the end of the day, it's you look at maybe somebody in the police force who makes, obviously they have more training, but they put in their 40 hours, they don't work overtime, they don't
right.
do what it takes, and so that's can be slightly frustrating, but
Yeah,
it's
yep.
just, and plus we're up for accreditation coming in this next cycle. So this is kind of a perfect time to
Yeah,
relook at some things. So
yeah, yeah, good. Anybody else? Amanda, how do we do on attendance? Do you think you have everybody in?
So
Cool, good.
look good.
All right, well, unless anybody's got any other questions, like we said, the recording will be available on YouTube a little bit later, probably next week. You will not be able to see it in your Iowa Learns because that's going away tomorrow. But for those of you who are taking it for credit, it will show up in mid-October when you get access to your account that will be set up for you in that. So we'll have more training on that as that comes along. So otherwise, thank you all for being here. And again, my apologies, you got just me instead of Bonnie, that familiar voice that you're all used to listening to on Boardroom webinars. So thanks, everybody.
I'm gonna stop recording here a second for you.
All right, thanks.